Okay, we're going to open up the session for 10 minutes of Q&A. So feel free to ask away any questions. I think we had really good presentations from both Chris and Monty. Thank you very much. And as you're thinking of your questions, keep in mind that what's nice about these presentations, like I said, they kind of do provide those bookends for your cyber defense, where you're analyzing the information coming in and then what do you do about it once you have the information in hand.
Yeah. So if you have a question, raise your hand.
And while you're working that way, I just want to say I loved Monty's presentation because the same thing that I thought helps build a successful IR program is being able to change your terrain, being able to own your environment, be able to give your people the data. As you saw, from a red team and a blue team aspect, we think the same, right? Like the same way that he would stop himself, that's how I want to stop him. That's what you can apply to your environments.
For Monty, who won the red-blue exercise you were talking about?
It was fun. This thing's not on. It was a lot of fun.
Within this space, are either of you seeing an increase in the activity based on the political environment that has recently been in all the headlines? From your perspective, are you seeing more traffic in that space? Are you seeing more aggressive behavior, or are you seeing the cyber community actually stepping up now that they're more aware?
So I'll be careful on how I answer this because I did work at CrowdStrike for many years. But as far as, I think what you're seeing today is that it is more known. We're being more public about the process. As far as whether nation states are trying to break into election systems, et cetera, I don't know if that's really changed. I think it's become much more public. And we're having a lot more visibility, and it's a good conversation to have is, how do we protect the integrity? Because the same way we protect the integrity of those systems, it's the same thing we apply to our networks, our computer systems, all the other assets that Monty talked about, right? This is the things that we're protecting, and we do the same thing across all the different spaces.
I love the presentation, I love the topics, but one area I wanted to get your opinion on is we're very focused and all of our knowledge and skills are built on on-prem type forensics, image gathering, that dig deep with identity management, vulnerability management, asset segmentation, all the things you talked about. How are you seeing that partnership with the various SaaS providers when you're losing control and you're only getting the front end access? You may have some logs for authentication, et cetera, but what about the individual segmentations within different tenants that are hosted on the same platform? What are you seeing as far as IR and digging deep on the SaaS platforms?
Go ahead.
Okay. So from our aspect, when I think cloud, first of all, the first thing that comes to mind is Meltdown Spectre, right? Hardware vulnerabilities. And I think that we're going to see many more hardware vulnerabilities as we go forward. I have a new mindset when it comes to using cloud services, that I would like to see my stuff not in a multi-tenant if I have any fear of it being compromised, right? If I cannot have that data compromised, I'm not sure I believe in a multi-tenant environment with today's hardware vulnerability type aspect that we're talking about. The other thing is with new technologies from the endpoint aspect, being able to record processes and events as they happen, I think that the forensics aspect of things will kind of relegate itself more to legal proceedings, and that we will have enough information based upon process execution and user processes that happen from new technologies that we will stop doing forensics for standard investigations.
Yeah, I just want to pile on that to Christopher's point is, I think we have to recognize that we have a new terrain. The cloud environment is really a genuinely different terrain than what we're used to dealing with on-prem. So that's one point. The second point is, if you look at cybersecurity as a discipline, it's very nascent. And so we've been sort of hunting and pecking and trying to figure out what works for us, both from a legal point of view and also from a technical point of view, to try to extrapolate what's important and what's not. And as a consequence of that, we've developed some practices, whether those are IR practices, those are forensics practices. And we've told the legal people to say, well, in order to really have proper attribution, you have to do these things, and therefore I can say that it was really Monty who stole the keys or whatever. And so likewise, since cloud is a different environment, we now have to understand what that environment is and what is good enough in order to feed the information up to impact laws and policies. So that's at a very high level. At a tactical layer, what I'm seeing a lot of customers do is spending a lot of time in that knowing phase. And the idea is that a lot of cloud services will provide you different levels of logging and different levels of introspection within whatever system is. If you're in the AWS environment, AWS has done a lot of things. There's a number of different AWS talks that you can take a look at that talk about how to do memory forensics, for example, within AWS. And there's other details like that. So I think the question to ask ourselves as defenders or as organization leaders is, what are the threats that we care about, and how do we build an evidence package to bring those threats to a conclusion, and then see how best we can take advantage of cloud services. In many cases, the cloud services actually help you to leapfrog your capability on what you wanted on-prem, because some of those things are there by default that you would have to instrument in your on-prem environment. And shameless plug, I did a talk on this topic at RSA in 2016.
All right, last question. We're pretty fortunate. A lot of the security personnel brought their bosses to work today. So if you could help them make the argument for that one investment that they really should dedicate very tight budgets to, what's the area of focus and the argument for the decision maker from the security team?
You go first. So for the managers in this room, I've never met a security leader that says, my organization's awesome because I complied on NIST 853. Or my organization's awesome because I got Monzyware in here and his product is so awesome that it's just like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. Your number one asset is your people. And it doesn't matter how much AI, BI, ZI, DI, whatever I you have, your people are your number one asset. So if you have a choice to buy something or to send somebody to training or to have them learn something and give them a day off just because they've been working their butts off for the last 3 weeks because they were recovering from something, do that. And yes, people are going to leave. It's a constrained market. But they're going to leave you faster than somebody else if you don't take care of them. So your people are your number one asset.
To add to that, when you, and from a product standpoint, lots of products go through the process, great. But I think that you should immediately focus your budget, your time, your people on the basics, right? Like, defense in depth is not dead, and we have to do the basics, and then we add in technology. If you can't do the basics right, you have no business buying a piece of technology because you're not going to know how to run it, because your people haven't been trained, you haven't invested in them to understand the basics. And once you get those basics down, then look for that new piece of technology. Then look for the process. Spend your money getting the basics right and getting your people to understand the basics, because you'll catch a lot of attacks with the basics right.
Thank you, Chris and Monty. Can we get a round of applause? Thank you. All right. Before I excuse you for the classes, because I know you guys are just dying to get out of your seats, right? I wanted to kind of bring it home just real quick, again, to kind of help provide some context. And I love that Monty said people, because at Orange County on all of our slides and everything we put out, we always say security is a process, not a technology, and it starts with people. You know, your people are your strongest link and your weakest link in your defense in-depth posture. So consider a cybersecurity awareness training program, not to have a shameless plug for that, because then you turn every employee in your organization into a sensor for you. But with that being said, I wanted to say the theme for this year's conference was defining the battlefield, right? We said that it was going to be, the cyber battlefield. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up, and I saw it in both presentations, is we have this idea in the military that we call terrain association, right? Battles are not won because I have more cannons than you do. They're not won necessarily because I have more people. And I'm going to relate that because there's a battle that takes place in, I believe it's 1415. My history is a little fuzzy. I'm sure somebody's going to correct me who's a history buff, but it's the Battle of Agincourt Valley in France. And the English decide they're going to invade France. And they go in with the superior force that, like many things in the 15th century, their force largely dies of dysentery on the march to Agincourt Valley. So by the time they get there, Henry has a handful of archers and some footmen left. The footman's a guy with the sword and some other people that can fight, and the French have a whole bunch of heavy cavalry. And heavy cavalry is soldiers with lots of armor, on horses with lots of armor, and they're going to trounce anybody that runs into the valley. So faced with this, he's looking at how can I possibly defeat this superior force? How can I stand up against this attacker? Which, by the way, the metaphor here is, as George alluded to this morning, make no mistake, the adversary you have to view as a superior force because they're organized and there's more of them than there is you. So he has to figure out, how am I going to deal with this superior force? What he realizes that the valley's wet, it's muddy, it's a constrained place, so a valley, right? And he says, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice my footmen. I'm going to send these guys in to draw the French heavy cavalry in so that they will come and stomp on my guys that are carrying swords. And I'm going to keep my archers on top of the valley, and I'm just going to shoot them as they run down the valley. He does this and defeats a superior French army, and the Battle of Agincourt is won by the English. He did that because he associated a terrain. Now, that's a very real military history kind of example of how that's done, but in the cyber world, it is the same way. You have to know yourself. You have to know where your weaknesses are. You have to leverage the information you have coming in, and always be prepared to do that terrain assessment of where I need to put resources and people to solve a problem as it comes up. So if you think about cyber in terms of that, I have to do this terrain association, I have to deal with this battlefield, then it allows you to make purchase decisions and people decisions about what you need when you need them. So with that, that's my final thought for the day, because you probably won't hear too much from me today. I want to excuse you to your classes, grab some coffee on the way. Is there anything else housekeeping-wise, Russ?
No, just get back here early, big agenda for lunch, and as you can see, we've got a full house.
You're going to be back here for lunch because everybody wants the meal, right? That's why we have the free meal for lunch and the drink tickets for the end of the day, and make sure you stay. Enjoy the conference. Have a great day. I hope to talk to some of you as we're walking around.